Every athlete leaves something behind. Not just records, but moments that changed the way the game felt. Some stories are loud. This one isn't. Tonight, we slow it all down. And listen. This is Whispers of Greatness. The quiet rise and legacy of Alex Morgan. She wasn't born into a stadium. She didn't wake up adored. There were no chants etched into the stars the night she was born. No banners waving outside her window. Just the quiet stretch of a Southern California sky, and the sound of her breathing softly, somewhere beneath it. Somewhere in Diamond Bar, a town small enough to be forgotten by maps, but just loud enough to whisper dreams into the right ears. There, behind a chain-link fence and a patch of tired grass, a pair of scuffed sneakers brushed against the earth. A girl, just a girl, no cameras, no gold, just the distant hum of passing cars and the weight of a secret even she didn't know she was carrying. The thing about greatness is, it doesn't always enter with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Sometimes it hides in crooked ponytails, skinned knees, and notebooks filled with classes she half listens to, because her heart is somewhere else. Somewhere green, somewhere wild. They called her Alex, but not yet the Alex the world would echo back. Right now, she's just a question mark wandering the edge of a dream. She isn't the tallest on the field. She isn't the strongest, but she runs like she's trying to outrun gravity, like there's something chasing her from behind, or maybe calling her from ahead. A coach once said she ran like the ocean when it's angry, quiet and endless, until it wrecks you. But even that comes later. For now, her world is small. Afternoons with sun-glinted windows. Soft dinners with her family. The distant bark of a dog outside. And that field, always the field, an open canvas of possibility, where her footsteps paint something only she can see. You wouldn't recognize her yet. She blinks when she misses shots. She ties her laces twice out of habit. Sometimes she cries when no one's looking, not because she's lost, but because it doesn't feel like enough. She doesn't know what she's chasing, only that she is. There are no trophies here. Only questions. What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm too late? What if this isn't what girls are supposed to do? But the field never answers. It just waits. Patient, faithful, silent. The ball rolls just right one night. And something stirs. A flicker. A breath. She looks up, and for the first time, she feels it. A tremor in her chest like lightning holding its breath. No one claps. No one cheers, but something's shifted, the kind of shift that never shifts back. And in that moment, beneath the soft evening sky of a nothing town on a forgotten field, a story begins. It starts not with noise, but with a whisper that sounds a lot like a name. Alex. If you've ever dreamed alone, if you've ever heard the hum of something waiting just beyond the horizon, then stay. This story is for you. And as for Alex, she was still only dreaming. But not for long. Somewhere in Diamond Bar, California, a girl chases something only she can see. The sun slips between eucalyptus trees, folding gold over rooftops and bike chains. It's not loud, this life. It buzzes like summer insects and hums with the faraway chirp of sprinklers. She's small, barefoot, breathless. Skin freckled by the hours she spends under sky. Limbs marked with tiny badges of adventure. Scrapes from fences, bruises from sidewalks, stories she never bothers to retell. Because she's already chasing the next one. In the backyard, a ball rolls lazily into the hedge. She doesn't groan, doesn't sulk. She dives in after it, like it matters. Like it always matters. Dinner can wait. Homework can wait. The world, whatever it is or isn't, can wait. Because this is her language. The arc of the ball midair, the kiss thud of sole meets leather, the way a small breeze might lift her shirt just enough to feel like she's flying. Her father watches from the sliding door, arms crossed, smiling in that way only quiet pride knows how to smile. He doesn't offer drills, doesn't shout instructions, he just lets her run. And she does. Up and down, back and forth, faster than the questions that haven't found her yet. Later, her mother hands her a glass of lemonade, cold, biting, sweet. The girl gulps it like she just returned from war. Maybe she has. Maybe every day out there feels like a battle she's not old enough to define, but can't stop coming back to. She isn't being molded, she's just becoming. No agents, no scholarships, just the soft routine of wanting more. At night, the sounds change. Crickets tune their sleepy violins. Cars grow fewer. And upstairs, she lies under a ceiling splattered with glow-in-the-dark stars. She doesn't think of greatness. She doesn't even think of tomorrow. She just remembers the way the ball curved. The way the grass felt, rough and cool, under her bare feet. The way her chest filled like a balloon she couldn't tie off. These aren't soccer dreams yet. They are dreams without shape. Only feeling. And somewhere, she decides, without deciding, that maybe this is the thing she'll keep chasing. Even when the world tells her to grow up, or slow down, or sit nicely, fold hands, behave, she'll forget these nights one day. Not because they weren't important, but because they sank so deep, they became part of her. The skinned knees, the sunburned shoulders, the breathlessness of joy earned, not given. That's where it all began. Not under a spotlight, but under a dusk sky, with the echo of a ball rolling toward no one and the sound of a young girl's feet following it. Again and again, not because she had to, but because she couldn't help it. She wasn't like the others. Not entirely. At practice, while others chattered, tugged ponytails, twirled on laces, she watched. Not the coaches, not the drills. The ball, always the ball, as if it whispered something only she could hear. She was still small, still unnoticed, but the way she moved, sharp angles, soft landings, it was different. Not polished, not pretty, but true. There was something truthful about the way she ran. A coach once leaned over his clipboard and said, "That one, she doesn't know what she's doing yet. But when she finds out, they won't catch her." They didn't give her the spotlight. They gave her the sidelines. They gave her orange slices and a jersey too big. And she wore them like armor. Because she never wanted easy. She wanted honest. She ran harder. Not to be faster, but to feel what it meant to try. To chase something just out of reach, again and again, until maybe, just maybe, it turned around and reached back. At home, there was no wall of trophies. No shelf of medals. Only a sketchpad with doodles of goals too wild to explain. Only scribbled notes. Try again. Keep moving. Faster. No one taught her that. It came from somewhere quieter. Somewhere private. A place she didn't share, even with herself. Sometimes she'd tap the ball against the garage, counting touches under her breath. 12, 13, a miss, start over. There was a fire in her. But no map, no compass or blueprint, just a flicker, just a sense. The others had plans, offers, scouts, blinking futures traced to the big leagues. She had bruises. She had calluses where glitter should have been. And she had that thing that can't be taught. Instinct. As if her heart answered questions before her brain asked them. She didn't dream of greatness. She dreamed of motion, of being faster tomorrow than she was today, of slicing through wind like it owed her something. On weekends, she'd ride her bike past fenced-off fields, peering through slats like someone hungry for another world. Sometimes, she'd hop the fence. Not to break rules, but to keep pretending what it might feel like to belong there. And one day, one very quiet day, a coach called her name on the lineup. Not out of confidence, out of curiosity. And she stepped on the field not like a girl who expected to win but like one who had already lost and chosen to show up anyway. The whistle blew, and for the first time, she wasn't chasing. She was leading, a blur of motion, A turn sharper than fear. A shot from an angle no one teaches, and the net rippled like a secret finally spoken. Nobody said anything, just a few claps, a nod, the sky, so wide and gold, not even noticing. But something happened inside her. Not pride, not relief, just a stillness, as if her body whispered, yes. That. It wasn't a breakout. It wasn't viral. It didn't echo through training rooms or inboxes. But it made her breath stick in her chest for just a moment. Enough to know, this isn't pretend, this could be real. She didn't celebrate, not loudly. She jogged back to the circle, bent knees, dirt on her socks, heartbeat knocking like a fist against her ribs. And beneath it all, that quiet question again. What if? What if I am enough? Back home that night, she didn't mention it over dinner. She poked peas with her fork, smiled when someone passed the salt. And later, alone, she tied her cleats again just to feel the laces in her fingers. No ceremonies, no headlines, just that whisper behind her ribs, like a tide just beginning to pull. Something slept inside her, and it was starting to stir. She had fire, but no map. At tryouts, they looked for form, for pedigree, for clean cuts and practiced finesse. She showed up late, slightly unsure, running on instinct, not history. Her cleats were worn, her jersey hung wrong, but when the ball landed at her feet, it stayed. Not because she controlled it, but because she listened to it. She joined the club team after others had already carved their paths. Teams with matching gear, matching expectations. She arrived with knees bruised from garage sessions and ankles wrapped in the trust of her own momentum. Some laughed, not cruelly, just unsure of what to do with someone so undefined. Raw, clumsy, even, but with a kind of thunder behind her toes. She didn't have the shine. She had the shadow of something still being shaped. And somehow, that was louder. The drills were foreign, the terminology fractured, but what she lacked in polish, she returned in presence, showing up again and again like a tide no one charted, but everyone felt. On weekends, she ran hills when others studied highlight tapes. Not because she thought it would win her glory, but because it quieted the hum in her head that said, go. Still go. No scouts followed. No emails filled her inbox. She didn't sip protein blends between sessions or carry monogrammed duffels. But she trained, and hurt, and returned. Older players overlooked her. Coaches scanned past her when drawing up starters. But eventually, when things broke down, when structure failed, and the game got wild, the ball found her feet. It didn't make sense, but it worked. One scrimmage. Ball at center, clock ticking lazily. Mismatched socks. Hair tied too tight. She didn't wait for instructions. She ran, past defenders who assumed, past expectations that dragged like weight. A feint, a skip, a shot that hummed with doubt and burned right through it. Goal. No jump, no scream, just a blink, and a stride backward, like nothing had happened. But something had. On paper, she didn't belong. No youth championships, no elite camps, just the quiet record of time spent in sweat and silence. But that goal stuck, the way some things do, not with awards but with memory. A teammate pulled her aside later, asked where she learned to move like that. She shrugged, said nothing, because she wasn't sure. Nowhere would be a good enough answer. They had medals, she had questions, they had rankings, she had rhythm, they had plans, she had wind in her chest and a hunger she still didn't know how to name. And maybe that was enough. Maybe not knowing where she belonged was the first step to finding it. Sometimes, a city meets you the moment you need it most. Berkeley was louder than home, older, wiser, and half-wrapped in fog. The streets hummed with questions. The sidewalks cracked in places where stories had grown too wild to stay soft. She arrived with a duffel bag filled more with wonder than strategy. No fanfare, No camera crews. Just a girl wearing number 13 and a heart trying not to beat too fast. College soccer wasn't a dream, it was the next instinct. But the pace was different here. Sharper passes, colder eyes, the kind of competition that didn't smile before it tested you. Still, she stayed. She learned new things. How to run without being chased. How to fail without folding. How to listen to correction without letting it steal your fire. Morning practices cut through fog like ship horns. Fields slippery with dew, cleats soaked before sunrise. She learned to lace tighter. Learned how cold can shape willpower. Afternoons bled into lectures, notebooks, and caffeine. Her body ached from drills. Her brain from details. But the tension felt honest, like something building, not breaking. There were nights when she wept softly into textbooks. Not from sadness, from effort, from the sheer press of trying so hard and not knowing if it mattered. And still, she trained. She left team dinners early to juggle alone under parking lot lights. Not for show, for repetition, for rhythm. It wasn't about being the best yet. It was about seeing who she could be when no one else was watching. And then, one game, late in the second half, rain ticked down like Morse code. She wasn't supposed to start, but someone tweaked a knee in warm-ups, and suddenly she was out there, jittery, soaked, hands clenched. The ball curved wide. She chased a nothing pass into the corner. Should have let it go, but she didn't. Instead, she gathered it, cut once, twice, saw a shadow shift, and strike. The net rippled, sudden, soft, like it sighed. There was no roar, just a few yelps, a cold hug, a half-smiled nod from the coach. But she felt it, not in her legs, in her ribs. The game moved on. Berkeley's skyline stretched behind her like a silent witness. And she knew, just a flicker, this wasn't luck. This was something else. Afterward, drenched and unnamed, she walked back to the dorm alone, cleats slung over her shoulder, mud streaked across her calves like war paint. She didn't text anyone, didn't brag. She just stood for a while in the hallway mirror, dripping, wordless. Something had broken and reformed inside her. It wasn't that she was seen. It was that, for the first time, she saw herself. And whispered, without needing to say it out loud, "You belong." One phone call, 15 rings, a breath, and then everything changed. She was folding laundry in the corner of a quiet dorm room, music low, sunlight in stripes across the floor. The phone buzzed once, twice. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to. Some flicker in the gut that said, "This one matters." She pressed the receiver to her ear, expecting a parent, a friend, a forgotten appointment. Instead, "Alex, this is US Soccer." 5 words, no bells, no drum rolls, just static, then instructions. Training camp, under 20 World Cup squad. They wanted to see her. The line stayed open, her silence mistaken for dropped signal. "I'm here," she said softly. And that's how it began. Not with a contract, not with spotlight, but a door, thin and cracked, opening just enough to slip through. She didn't jump or scream. She pressed the phone back in place like it might burn. Then sat on the edge of the bed, socks half folded in her lap. Breathing, like someone relearning how. Later, she told no one. Only slipped out early the next morning, running through fog thicker than routine, feet lighter than before. Camp was unfamiliar. It smelled like new turf and pressure. Girls who trained at elite academies. Girls with statistics, sponsorships, years of yes behind them. Alex passed them quietly, eyes down, heart high. She was still learning the language of high-level play. Formations whispered like code. Movements stitched by instinct, not diagram. But again, the ball found her. And she didn't overthink. She ran. There was a scrimmage, an interception, a quick 1-2. The space opened, just for a breath. She slipped through it. The keeper lunged. The world paused, and the ball kissed net. No celebration, just silence, helmeted silence. A few heads turned, a clipboard dipped. She jogged back to position with that same unreadable face. But something had spoken for her in a voice she couldn't mimic. Only follow. Later, a coach approached. Not casual, not kind. Just curious. You're not like the others, he said. She wanted to ask if that was good, but stayed quiet, because she wasn't sure who she'd become yet. Only that it felt impossibly close. The tournament came, and with it, a ticket to Chile. A world far from garage doors and turf burns. There were flags around shoulders. Anthems above the pitch. Eyes, so many eyes. She didn't start the first game, or the second, but the third. Finally, she heard her name. Not as background, as beginning. Late in the match. Heavy legs everywhere. She came in like wind, fresh, fast, forgotten. A lob broke loose. A defender hesitated. She didn't touch. Stride. Strike. Upper corner. Like poetry too sharp to read aloud. Crowd erupted. Camera found her. And for a sliver of a second in the middle of a foreign stadium, everyone stopped pretending they didn't know her name. But she didn't raise fists or point skyward. She just turned and jogged. Brows relaxed. A whisper on her lips. Not yet. Not done. Back home, the footage looped. Analysts said, elegant, clinical, natural. But they didn't know the hill runs, the echo against the garage wall, the inch of breath she'd been holding for years. She didn't feel like she'd arrived. She felt like she'd finally started. 2012. London hummed beneath her cleats, history in the river, pressure in the air. Every building looked like it was waiting for something miraculous. Every anthem felt stitched with expectation. Alex stood behind the names, behind legends, behind medals. She wasn't supposed to lead yet. Not here, not now. She was fast, yes. Youthful. But this was the Olympics. And she was just her. Number 13. New. Eyes wide, breath held, lungs aching for rhythm. But the sidelines taught her. Watching Abby lean into headers with a warrior's grace. Watching Rapinoe carve the wing like a question with an answer tucked inside. She learned without asking. Then came the call. Not days before. Not hours. Moments. Sub in. Clock ticking down. Canada across the pitch like a mirror held too close. Chaos in every direction. She entered the match like a heartbeat entering silence. No flair. Just footing. And then, sweat, movement, whistles. Extra time. Everything bleeding into everything else. It was minute 123. Even the night was tired. The scoreline deadlocked. The stadium exhaled in shaky rhythm. The ball curved in from the corner. A desperate arc, mid-air with hope and wonky spin. She rose. Not taller than defenders. Just better timed. She didn't think. Didn't aim. She just connected. Forehead. Ball. Time stopped. The net snapped back. And the world forgot how to breathe. Teammates swarmed. Arms. Screams. Tears made sharp by joy. A moment carved into eternity. But Alex didn't roar. She smiled, shy, stunned. Tilted her head almost like she was asking if it really happened. And beneath it all, still that whisper. Not yet, not done. After the match, interviews tried to name it. Magic, luck, destiny. But she knew better. It was miles of running when no one watched. It was corners juggled in fading dusk. It was 12 years between fence hops and this header. And how do you explain that? You don't. You play. You show up. You let your legs tell the truth. And that night in London, under gold-burnished skies and roaring breathless lights, Alex Morgan told hers. The high was louder than she ever imagined. Gold medals, magazine covers, a stadium that knew her name before she walked in. But championships end, confetti gets swept, and eventually, even echoes fade. The days after were quieter. Stillness she hadn't trained for. No alarm, no team bus, just morning light through curtains she didn't remember closing, and a silence that felt heavier than celebration ever did. She walked slower, not from injury, though there were those too, but from the strange hush of not chasing something immediate. Everyone expected a smile. She's Alex Morgan now. Winning was part of her name. But what happens when there's nothing left to outrun, for a moment? The press kept asking questions even when she had no answers. What's next? Can you do it again? Was that your peak? And behind each question, a dagger wrapped in politeness. Are you still enough? She kept training, kept moving, kept showing up with taped ankles and a polite nod. But the fire that once surged effortlessly through her legs needed coaxing now. It flickered, more match than inferno. Some days, she'd sprint until her lungs gave out, just to remember what it felt like not to doubt herself. Some weeks, she'd put the ball down in front of her and not move. Just stare, as if waiting for it to demand something from her. It didn't. She had become the target, not the surprise. And that's a harder jersey to wear. The swelling behind her knee wouldn't go down. No matter the ice, the tape, the prayers. She played through it, not because she was brave, but because stepping away felt scarier than pain. Some teammates whispered she wasn't as dangerous anymore. She heard, smiled anyway, and tried harder. But there's a loneliness in being known, in being expected, in being dissected instead of discovered. She went home between games and watched old clips of herself, not for pride, for proof that she was once invincible. She wished there was a playbook for after. For when the roar dies down and all that's left is your own breath. But there isn't, so she adjusted. She stopped playing to prove. Started playing to feel again. Not every chapter roars. Some merely breathe. One morning, she woke to pain, familiar now. But instead of dread, she stretched, got dressed, laced up, and whispered, "I'm still here." Because ambition is loud at first. But resilience? Resilience is quiet. It grows in the silent seasons. The ones without applause. And so did she. They asked her to smile more. After a win, after a loss, after a goal that bent logic and stitched the net with wonder, the question always came, why so serious? She didn't know how to answer. She wasn't sad. She just wasn't interested in grinning on cue. Because the field was her sanctuary, and joy there didn't look like posing. It looked like sweat, like contact, like flight. Still, the headlines showed up. The think pieces, the comment sections. Too cold. Too intense, too proud, as if pride were a shameful thing for a woman to wear. No one asked the men to apologize for celebration. No one paused a slow-mo replay to ask whether passion had crossed the invisible line into arrogance. But for her, a sip of tea after a goal became a global referendum on grace. She didn't defend it, didn't explain away her glee or narrow her fire. Because by then she knew, each time she scored, she wasn't just playing for herself. Every run, every cut, every flick past a keeper was a quiet rebellion on behalf of every girl ever told to soften her edges. She carried them all, the 12-year-old watching through fence slats, the 15-year-old who plays defense because a coach said forwards are too flashy for girls, the ones who quit early, the ones who never started, the ones who yell into pillows because the world keeps asking them to shrink. Every time she stepped on the field, they walked with her. And that weight, it didn't crush. It clarified. She felt it during anthem lines when the cameras zoomed and the crowd roared, and for a heartbeat, the world turned its eyes to a face it still didn't seem to fully believe. She met that gaze, not with gratitude, not with defiance, with truth. Because little girls don't dream of being icons. They just dream of moving, of touching the game and not being told it isn't theirs. So when she celebrated, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a stillness sharper than sound, it wasn't attitude. It was accumulation of years of running, of assumptions dodged, of ceilings nudged again and again until something cracked. People said she was becoming a symbol. But that wasn't the point. She didn't want statues, didn't care for slogans. She wanted to play, unburdened, uninterrupted, unapologetic, to show that being a woman in this game wasn't about proving worth. It was about claiming space. Without asking, not for glory, but for momentum, because change doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives step by step, goal by goal, through the quiet insistence that we belong. And she, curved in motion, eyes ahead, jaw set beneath the noise, kept running. They said it was bad luck. 13, a number skipped on elevators, avoided on jerseys, whispered like an omen. She wore it anyway, not to taunt, not to tempt fate, to remind herself that all the rules, the spoken and especially the quiet ones, were made without her in mind. She wasn't supposed to be here, anyway. Not with her late start, her untrained stride, her edges still too unshaped to shine properly. So if the number made people pause, good. Let them wonder if she knew what she was doing. Let them think she hadn't thought it through. Let them overlook her because superstition wrapped around their logic. She didn't want belief handed to her. She wanted it earned. 13 was her contradiction, her silent dare, the scar she chose to wear on purpose. Because sometimes, what the world fears is exactly what sets you free. It wasn't just fabric, it was friction, a flag for those who didn't bloom in spring, who needed the long road, who moved differently and carried doubt like a second heartbeat. Each time she slipped it on was an act of quiet defiance. Not for cameras, not for myths, for herself. To say, I don't believe in your shapes of luck. I believe in movement, in grit, in the way the smallest number can carry the sharpest edge. And she did. She carried it. Through airports and finals, through press tours and scratched-out strategies. She carried it in her steps, sharp, confident. Never louder than needed, but always louder than silence. The number trailed her into games. Across jerseys hung in bedroom closets. Tattooed on arms in youth leagues. Etched into notebooks by girls who whispered her name like it was both question and answer. She stayed with it, not because it promised more, but because it scared people enough to be worth keeping close. Some players collect records. She collected moments. The sound a ball makes when it spins off laces just right. The breath caught between pass and goal. The stillness after a stadium explodes. Her number wasn't lucky. It was hers, and that made all the difference. Because the thing about being underestimated is you never owe anyone an explanation, only the result. Each time that 13 flashed across a scoreboard, each time it lingered in post-game recaps and scrolled through final tallies, it stopped being a warning. It became a signature, a mark, proof that luck favors the ones who don't wait for approval. So she wore it, game after game, doubt after doubt, run after run, and every time the ball hit the back of the net, it didn't echo with apology. It echoed with the sound of something being rewritten. Not mythology, identity, on her own terms, with her own number, and with her own story, which was never about luck, but about presence, and no one wore it quite like her. Time doesn't stop for mothers. It doesn't pause when the due date circles closer. It doesn't slow when the body aches from stretching into someone else's home. It just moves, steady, relentless. Alex felt that. The soft rhythm of ultrasounds in one ear, the sharper rhythm of stadium chants in the other. She ran drills with a heartbeat inside her. Weighted vests, not for training, but for protection. For the life she now carried, even while chasing the one she already lived. Whispers followed her. Should she still be training? Isn't she slowing down? Will she ever come back the same? Those weren't questions. They were challenges wrapped in concern. But she heard them, and decided they weren't louder than the sound of cleats on wet grass. She trained through trimesters, modified, careful, determined, not reckless, resilient. Some days, balance was elusive. Shoelaces hard to reach, muscles responding with sighs instead of snaps. But joy lived there too. The quiet satisfaction of finishing a workout with one hand on her stomach and the other on her knee, catching breath. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about continuity, not letting the world split her into halves. Because motherhood didn't rewrite who she was. It revealed more of her. People asked if it changed her game. Of course it did. Everything meant more now. Every sprint, every header, every win soaked in the knowledge that someone tiny would one day watch the footage and know, that's my mom. When Charlie was born, Alex held her like both glass and surprise. Not fragile, sacred. Love, immediate and unnamed, spilled into all the spaces that used to hold pressure. Motherhood didn't soften her, it focused her. The road back was hard. There were tears, doubt, thick as fog. Body not bouncing, but crawling. Relearning tempo, regaining trust. Still, she pressed forward. Slowly, steadily, the same way she always did. A jog became a sprint. A sprint became a goal. And then, she returned. Not as a shadow of who she was, but as something fuller, heavier, with more to carry and a deeper reason to run. Game days came with diaper bags. Warm-ups followed by lullabies. Post-match interviews cut short for bottle feeds backstage. Balance wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Sometimes, she'd catch her daughter staring at her cleats. Like seeing wings she didn't understand yet. And one day, maybe years from now, Charlie will ask who Alex Morgan was. And the answer will be layered. A striker, a leader, a mother, each one hard-earned, each one real. Because Alex didn't just return to the game. She remade it, into a place where women don't have to choose between greatness and giving life. She didn't just carry a child. She carried a truth. That strength has many names. And hers now answered to more than one. France, 2019. The air felt heavier there, denser with history, with hope, with the hum of eyes watching. For Alex, everything had changed. But everything still counted. They called it her third World Cup. She called it another chance to get it right, again. There were banners, painted faces, flags stretched like arms across oceans. But none of it mattered when the whistle blew. Then it was only grass. Breath, the stitch of cleats into soil. Time folding in. She moved like memory, sharp, precise. Not chasing, owning. And when the ball curved toward her in the semifinal against England, the moment didn't swell. It sharpened. A flick. A header. The net waved like it recognized her. Goal. 29th birthday. World Cup semi. An entire planet between breaths. She turned. Smiled. Small, calm, deadly. Then raised the pinky and mimed a sip of tea. It lasted seconds. But the world roared. Critics called it smug, disrespectful, improper. Like celebration needed permission. Like fire needed to be palatable. They dissected her confidence like it was a crime of joy. But she didn't flinch. She didn't tweak defenses. She didn't explain that the gesture wasn't malice. It was mock invitation. A wink at tension. A nod to rivalry. A moment unbothered. Because the truth is, when you work this long, this hard, for something no one thought you'd keep pace with, sometimes you earn the right to sip from the silence you finally broke open. Let them say what they will. She had run through bedrooms in Diamond Bar. Through rain at Berkeley. Through doubting noise and stitched together belief. Through injury, absence, motherhood, and the 1,000 unnamed miles no one else felt in their bones but her. This wasn't arrogance. This was arrival. And it wasn't new. Men had done worse, louder, with no backlash, no op-eds. But Alex raised a pinky, and the world lost its balance. She kept hers, because she understood what they didn't. That being a woman on the world stage means being both target and torch. That strength only counts if it smiles. She played the rest of the tournament with grace sharpened into steel. 5 goals, 1 assist, every motion deliberate, clean. The US lifted the trophy. Again, and Alex, chin tilted, boots streaked, held it like it wasn't just metal. It was proof that power can be quiet, and that sometimes when the work is done, and the story nearly told, you deserve a moment to hold your cup high. And take the smallest, sweetest sip. You see the goals, the replays, the slow-motion flick of a boot meeting a ball, the exact timing of a header as it bends into history. You see the explosion, the celebration, the arms raised and the camera flash catching it just right. But you don't see the morning before. You don't see the alarm clock at 5:17 a.m., the stiffness in her ankles before the heat comes in, the scrape of a protein bar wrapper, the silence of the kitchen, the hum of fluorescent lights in empty locker rooms as she tapes her own knee in ritual silence. You don't see her wincing as she stretches. The quiet wince, not the dramatic kind, but the kind you breathe through because you have to. Because someone's watching, someone's not. You don't see the drills when the cameras are gone. The 8th sprint when her lungs pack in. The 9th, when she tells them to keep going anyway. You see the pass, the run, but not the bruise that made the pass hurt. You don't see the emails she answers late at night, after putting her daughter to bed. The back and forth of brand obligations, community outreach, requests she can't say no to because she knows what this platform means. You never see the children's hospital visits. She goes often, no post about it, no film crew, just her and a ball in the hallway, juggling, softly, while a child with tubes watches with eyes full of light. She lets them touch the metal. She smiles even when it still smells like the sweat of the final. They don't always know who she is, but they know she listens. You see the moment she lifts her teammates up after a game. But you don't hear the words she says when the cameras look away. That quiet, solid tone she keeps in her back pocket, stone when needed, soft when it counts. The broken voice when a rookie doubts herself. The firm one when leadership is silence, not speeches. You think leadership looks like pointing. Sometimes it just looks like staying. You see the goals. You don't see that she plays through tight hamstrings, locked hips, headaches, swollen feet. That she's learned the difference between pain you treat and pain you play through. Pain is a language now. She speaks it fluently. You see the cleats, but not the rice bags she heats before bed, the compression sleeves, the hours of icing alone in a quiet corner of the room while everyone else showers and jokes and decompresses. She doesn't joke much these days. Not because she's lost her joy. Because she's learned where to store it, where to save it, because the field demands all of her. And the rest, the lightness, the smiles, waits at home, in lullabies and tiny footsteps, and small pajamas folded neatly on hotel beds. You see 90 minutes. She carries 24 hours. You see one game. She carries 1,000. So yes, you see the goals. But not the shadows underneath them. The injuries you can't wrap. The loneliness after a game where no pass connects. The tears nobody catches on camera. Tears not for losses, but for knowing she did everything, and still wonders if it was enough. You see the wins, but not the weight. And still, she shows up. With her laces tied, with her voice steady, with shoulders squared against a world still measuring her in ways they wouldn't dare measure others. She doesn't ask for sympathy. Only honesty. Because what she gives isn't easy. It's earned. Over and over again. You see the goals. But if you look just a little closer, you'll see the woman behind them. And how quietly, how constantly, she carries it all. She was never the loudest voice in the room. Didn't need to be. While others rallied crowds, she built bridges, quietly, brick by brick. They thought leadership looked like speeches, spotlights. She showed it could look like service. Like knowing when to speak and when to stay beside someone in silence. It began with questions. Why are we paid less? Why is our champions' banner smaller, our bonuses thinner, our future dimmer, when our results shine gold? The answers didn't satisfy, so she didn't stop asking. Lawsuits were filed, headlines churned, opinions flew heavier than cleats in a final. She didn't yell on podiums. Didn't slam fists in interviews. She showed up to negotiating tables with data, with stories, with clarity. Not for vengeance, for vision, not just for herself, for the rookies beside her, still learning their worth, for the girls in backyard games across the country, unaware of the ceiling above them. She wasn't just chasing victory anymore. She was chasing fairness, not as a symbol, as a teammate. As a mother who didn't want her daughter to inherit a fight still unfinished. In meetings, she nodded when others interrupted, then spoke with precision that silenced the room. Every time her name slid off a press release, they forgot. She wasn't asking to be thanked. Just counted. When the victory came, when equal pay wasn't a dream but a hard-won fact, she didn't claim the spotlight. She smiled, passed the mic, and made sure everyone standing behind her felt seen. Beyond courtrooms and contracts, she built other things. Foundations, scholarships, spaces where young girls could train, dream, build muscles both physical and mental. Not to become the next Alex Morgan. To become fully, fearlessly themselves. She didn't ask them to be quiet. She encouraged their questions. Taught them their voice wasn't a liability, it was power. And when the cameras dimmed, when the speeches faded, she kept going. One girl at a time. One story at a time. One belief at a time. That we don't have to wait to be invited. We can build our own field. With our own lines. Our own nets. Our own rules. She never saw herself as a warrior. But every time she said, yes, when it was easier to say nothing. Every time she stayed when walking would have been safer. She staked a claim on a future with more light. Less asking, more becoming. She didn't shout. She opened the door, stepped aside, and said, "Come in, there's room," and then ran back to the pitch, cleats laced, heart full. Where even justice can begin with a touch, a pass, a goal. Some families are stitched not in blood, but in cleats and courage. That's how it felt, being part of something bigger, not just a team, but a quiet symphony of belief. There were no perfect people. Just late flights, sore muscles, tangled ponytails in hotel bathrooms. Just women figuring it out, on the field, off the field, beside each other. Alex wasn't always the one starting the playlist. But she listened, gave space. Knew when a joke needed to land, or when silence had to hold. In locker rooms, she wasn't loud. She was constant, a presence you could lean on, stand behind, confess failure to. She shared tape, snacks, glances across the field that meant, "I see you. Let's go again." There were inside jokes, of course, but also inside battles. Shared injuries, shared fears. Times when one would limp, and the other would walk slower just to stay alongside. Off the pitch, friendships formed in airports, coffeehouse corners. Late-night texts about tactics and toddlers, tiny triumphs and heavy news. She and Megan, fiery opposites, the bold and the brooding, balanced each other. With Tobin, there was mischief. With Kristen, deep talks crafted in jet-lagged whispers. With Becky, strategy dissected like poetry. Their chemistry didn't come from similarity. It came from shared weight. Shared goals. Shared disbelief in limitations. Alex had a way of remembering what you told her. About your sister, your ankle, your grandmother's necklace. She listened like it mattered. Because it did. After losses, she gave space. After wins, she made room beside her in photos, pulling others in like gravity. Leadership wasn't a crown she wore. It was the hand she offered when someone else stumbled. New players came in wide-eyed, rotating between awe and doubt. She'd approach quietly, not with grand speeches, with a simple, "You good?" And somehow, they were. Because she remembered what it felt like to be new. To want in, to not know how, so she made the in feel warmer. There were moments, subtle, unrecorded, where teammates shared stories of heartbreak, and Alex didn't rush to fix it. Only sat with them, cleats off, hearts open. Sisterhood wasn't declared, it was lived, in pep talks at 5 a.m., in post-game hugs that held longer than expected, in borrowed hair ties, in shared playlists that traveled country to country. They weren't perfect, they argued, they walked away sometimes, but always came back, because something deeper tethered them, not contracts, not uniforms, trust. Alex carried that trust gently. So when they said her name in circles, it wasn't about her stats. It was about her steady. It was about the way she never let the circle break. Some injuries are easy to name. A torn ligament, a strained hamstring, a fractured toe. They're printed on paper, circled in red, fitted into a timeline with an expected return. But not all wounds bleed. Some sit under the skin, quiet and unsettling, the kind you try to outrun but end up carrying, mile after mile. For Alex, the hardest pain wasn't physical. It was forgetting how to trust her own spark. There were mornings she'd lace up and feel nothing. No dread, no thrill, just blank. She'd drift through drills, her body moving the way it always had, sharp cuts, clipped passes, automatic runs, while her mind floated somewhere miles overhead, watching without reacting. It didn't make sense. This was the field, her place, her rhythm. She had fought for it, bled for it, but suddenly, the game felt slippery. Too many voices, too much watching. The same field that once gave her freedom now asked her, daily, "Are you still her? Are you still enough?" She'd smile in interviews, give crisp answers about preparation, focus, gratitude. But backstage, there were nights she sat cross-legged on hotel carpets, head in hands, replaying plays she didn't make, chances she didn't take. There were games she walked off from with dry eyes and a soaked jersey, unsure which part of her felt heavier, legs or heart. It wasn't burnout, it was erosion, tiny doubts, sprinkled and settled, wearing at the foundation. Not with shouts, but with whispers. "You're slowing down. They want someone shinier now. You've already told your story. It's over." And still, she trained. Sat through film sessions, taped every joint that once moved without permission, laughed when she could, led when she had to, taught the rookies how to shake off nerves and lace confidence over fear. Even when hers ran thin. Because that's what veterans do. What leaders do. They show up, even when they're unraveling inside. No one tells you how heavy legacy can feel. Especially when it starts to press inward. She began journaling again. Few words. Broken thoughts. Not poems or plans. Just truths she couldn't say aloud. Today felt hard. I miss the days when running felt like flying. I want to be seen, but not watched. And then, slowly, she found her way back. Not dramatically. Not with a buzzer-beater goal or a miracle comeback. With moments. A soft pass perfectly timed. A goal not celebrated loudly, but felt deep in the chest. A teammate whispering, "Thank you," after a quiet pep talk that meant the world. She learned that greatness isn't always about ascent. Sometimes, it's about survival. Not quitting when the light dims. Continuing anyway. Because loving the game doesn't mean it always loves you back unconditionally. And yet, you stay. Some days, she still feels it scratching beneath her ribs. Doubt, dull and persistent. But she's stopped pretending it isn't there. She just outruns it now. Not every time, but often enough. And when the final whistle blows and the field fades to silence, she breathes, not because it's over, but because she stayed. She never chased the spotlight. It found her sometimes candids after goals, magazine spreads, gold medals biting the edge of smiles. But that's not where her story lived. It lived in quiet hallways before games, where she double-knotted laces not out of superstition but care. It lived in the way she tucked in her jersey with precision, the same way she did at 12. It lived in the silence between drills, where her breath and the ball were the only language. Alex Morgan wasn't the kind of star that explodes overhead. She was the star you noticed in retrospect. The one burning steady in the corner of your sky, lighting your way without demanding your gaze. Young players mimicked her stride, not because it was flashy, but because it worked. Forward wasn't just a position anymore. She made it an intention. Direct, certain, sharp when needed, but anchored in grace. She reshaped the idea of what it meant to be dangerous. Not wild, not reckless, calculated, clean, patient. Even her quiet became iconic. The stillness before a penalty. The pause after a goal. The glance exchanged with a teammate like the beginning of a book you already knew you'd love. Her legacy stretched beyond numbers. Goals fade, records fall, but example sticks. In conversations whispered between young teammates. She never missed a workout. She waited behind after practice so I could get one more set in. She believed in me before I did. That's where greatness echoes. It's in how others retell you, not in highlight reels, but in feeling. She taught that brilliance doesn't always mean intensity. It can mean control, precision, breathing when the room holds its breath. When the locker room needed grounding, she offered stillness. When the field asked for risk, she answered with instinct. When the moment tested heart, she met it, cleats planted, eyes unwavering. She didn't need slogans. Her career was one, not carved in bold letters, carried in footsteps. In the invisible weight she bore without complaint. The consistency that never made the headlines but built the spine of the team. The belief that if you're going to lead, do it with your feet first, and let your words come later. The ones who watched her rise will someday tell their daughters. She was the one who didn't flinch. She was the one whose silence said everything. She was the one we followed because she never asked to be followed. And years from now, when the game continues without her cleats in the grass, someone will score a goal, stand with familiar calm, and smile in that same understated way. And we'll know. That's Alex's legacy. A pattern so subtle, it becomes instinct. Presence that doesn't demand, it simply remains. The house is quieter now. Not the silence of absence, the softness of rhythm. Tiny feet on hardwood, little breaths steady in sleep. A lullaby she never learned the words to, but sings anyway. She once measured success in minutes played, goals scored, games won. Now she measures in moments, the first laugh, a grasping hand around her finger. The way her daughter says, ball, like it's both question and invitation. Alex never planned this exactly. Family was always a someday. The game had taken up so much room, it was hard to imagine more inside it. But somehow, there was room. She didn't stop being an athlete when she became a mother. She just became more of one than she had ever known possible. Morning stretches now come between breakfast and messy hair. Shoelaces double knotted next to tiny Velcro straps littered with cereal dust. Her body remembers the drills. Her mind runs the plays. But her heart, it's been retuned. Because now, when she runs, she thinks of what it looks like to stay in motion for someone else. She notices playground fields with uneven corners. Wonders if cleats come in toddler sizes. Wonders if her daughter will love it too. Or write her own rhythm in something entirely different. There's no pressure. Only hope. Hope that one day, her daughter will chase something because it fills her lungs with light, not because the world says she should. Hope that if she falls, she'll get up. Not for applause, for herself. Hope that she grows in a world where women aren't asked to choose between their passions and their presence. Alex knows now. Legacy isn't the medals tucked in drawers, the photos in frames. It's watching your child run barefoot in the yard and seeing yourself not in her footsteps, but in the freedom she feels to make them her own. Sometimes she sits on the porch with coffee gone cold, watching her daughter kick a too big ball across the grass. Sometimes she joins, sometimes she just watches, and in both, she feels it again. That first spark, that first pull of something she didn't yet understand but couldn't stop chasing. She doesn't know if her child will play the game. Doesn't need her to. She only hopes that whatever she loves, she runs toward it. The way her mother did. Relentless, unapologetic, open-hearted, and if she ever asks what it was all for, the games, the goals, the grind, Alex will kneel down, brush dirt from her daughter's knees, and say, "To make space, yours." And maybe, in that small curved smile, a new story will begin. She doesn't know when the thought first arrived. Maybe it was after practice, standing by the tunnel while the others jogged in. Maybe it was in the car with the soft hum of her daughter's movie playing in the backseat. Maybe it was just, always there, waiting. What if this is it? Not with sadness, not with fear, just curiosity. The whisper of something coming full circle. She's still playing, still lacing up, still timing her runs to the second. But there's a different gravity now. A different pulse to the match day rhythm. Her eyes scan more. Her voice carries farther. Her passes lean more into wisdom than speed. There's power in that too. The young players look at her with something between reverence and disbelief. As if she's the painting come to life. As if they're still not sure she's real. She laughs with them, offers advice only when it's asked for. But they ask, often, how do you stay calm at the line? What do you do when it all feels too big? Sometimes she answers. Sometimes she just nods toward the field and says, run. Because for all the years, the medals, the goals, the interviews, it still distills to that. Run. Sometimes, she'll sit in the locker room just a few extra minutes after everyone's gone. Hands resting on her knees, staring at the floor like it might tell her something. She doesn't need more. Statistically, she's done. Emotionally, not yet. There are things she still wants to build, to say, to teach with motion rather than voice. There are voices rising all around her now, bolder, louder, fearless. And she finds comfort in that. She doesn't worry what happens to the team without her. She believes in them. She sees it already. In the way they gel. The way they weep together after hard matches. The way the younger ones wheel through the parking lot with the same kind of hunger she used to feel in her lungs. She's not their future. But she's still there now. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful place to stand. To be in between. To ferry greatness across the line from what was to what's next. Sometimes when the crowd chants, she hears echoes layered beneath it, names of teammates long absent, younger versions of herself, the laughter of little girls behind fences, faces pressed to chain links. They're all here with her, all watching as the shape of her career begins bending gently, not into an end, but a return. A remembering. She isn't walking away, but she's looking further. Toward coaching, perhaps. Toward lifting others the way someone once quietly lifted her. And when the final whistle blows, whenever it comes, she won't need a speech. She'll walk off, sweaty, smiling. Because she'll know. She gave the game everything. And the game, in turn, gave her a life. Now, it's someone else's turn. And she'll be there. Hand resting lightly on the railing, watching. Just watching. There's a girl in cleats somewhere. Maybe she's 10, maybe younger. Hair tangled from wind, not style. Shin guards too big, determination tighter than her laces. She's sprinting across a field that isn't quite level, tripping sometimes, laughing sometimes, chasing a ball that seems to always roll just beyond reach. She doesn't know what position she plays yet. Doesn't know about scholarships, contracts, critics. All she knows is this. When she runs, the world goes quiet. And in one quiet corner of a stadium, long after the floodlights dim, Alex Morgan watches. Not from a podium, not from spotlights, but from a seat tucked between memory and wonder. She sees the way the girl drives forward, not just for the goal, for the feeling. It's familiar, ancient, like muscle memory passed from soul to soul. Alex smiles, not because her time is over, not because legacy knocks gently at her door, but because the story, her story, was never meant to stand still. It was meant to run, to leap fences, to scuff knees, to whisper into someone new, try. Her cleats, once drenched in London rain, now hang quietly by the door. Not forgotten, just resting. She never needed a curtain call, the roar of goodbye. She only needed to know. The game lives on, framed by dusk and breathlessness, chased in bare feet and wide eyes. She once chased a whisper. Now, she is the whisper. And somewhere, another girl hears it. Doesn't look around, just runs. Because something, somewhere ahead, is calling her name. And Alex smiles. Not from behind, not above, but beside her. Still running, always running, forever just ahead.